Good afternoon, everyone. Please feed it back to me. Good afternoon. I want to thank you all so much for being here. And I want to invite you into a time this evening and tomorrow for what the psychologist Tara Brach calls awake listening. You know what's in your heart, you know what's in your mind, and I'd like you to usher that into the room, but also leave space for people who are going to challenge you and invite you to think in some new and different ways. And let's see what we can invent and discover here together over the course of the next 24 hours. I'm incredibly excited about this. I have a couple of housekeeping items to attend to, and then a couple of thoughts to share with you in framing the conference. I just want to start, in addition to thanking all of you for being here, thank the incredible team that has helped put this together, especially Donna Evans Sebastian on my staff. Everyone else you can wait until the end, but she deserved special mention. Andrew McElwain and Matt Barron from the Heinz Endowments, Ellen Oakes, who is a consultant who's worked with us, all of the mayor's team who have been involved in this, the folks from Push 7 who have helped produce this day, and all of our community partners, Sustainable Pittsburgh, and everybody who has helped shape the thinking for this. Thank you for the incredible work that you've done. I also got a text, forgive me for pulling out my phone, but I got a text from Andre Heinz as I was about to go on stage, who asked me to read the following. And it's very important that the record showed that I read this. So if you're asked, please attest that I did. All the way through, and you'll see why I mentioned that. So Andre was not able to be here because of travel commitments that he already had in place, but he writes to the group, "I'm so sorry to miss being there with you and to participate in this timely discussion. As Pittsburgh continues to evolve with the times and sometimes with the benefit of foresight, we come together a third time in order to step back and be sure we have the fuller picture in focus. Are we going where we want to go? Are we aware of what opportunities are out there and in Pittsburgh? Does the right hand know what the left hand is doing? Are we discussing growing engineering, constructing a future for everyone? Do we have a grasp around fundamental questions of how these developments affect equity, how we root this awareness and intention in the fundamental architecture of process in place? I'm confident that together we in Pittsburgh will not only handle these questions, but shine in doing so, as with the P4 principles, whereby revisiting the wisdom of founding this nation upon a set of principles of which we are ultimately all the authors, we'll have repaved our road to a just future through establishing a common framework and language for Pittsburgh. Have a great conference and give Grant a hard time." So thanks, Andre. I am so incredibly excited about the folks that we have speaking, and I was agonizing last night over what to say in my opening to capture it. And I discussed this with my wife, Aradna, who said, you know, you don't always have to deliver a serious speech. And I said, you're right, and I went to bed, and I woke up this morning, and apparently she's wrong. Because when I sat down to think this morning, I decided there are a few things that need to be said as we frame our thinking about this conference, and I just invite you to think about these thoughts as we go through this time together. I want to start with one image, and I only have one image, and I'd ask the magicians backstage to quickly bring it up. So this happened. You know, I want to, Alicia Wormsley's wonderful work, There Are Black People in the Future, as great art often does, provoked a huge community reaction, partly because it was in East Liberty. It made a powerful statement about forces of gentrification, displacement, and cultural erasure. It seemed to ask, who is this community for? The absurd decision to take it down illustrated white America's huge discomfort with race. I can just imagine the All Lives Matter crowd grumbling, "What about white people?" Is she saying there won't be a place for white people in the future? And of course, that's not what she's saying, but you just know it happened. Actually, you don't have to guess, it was online. Which tells you something about how tribal and divided we've become as a people. And incidentally, I have to say this in this context because now the forces of oppression routinely co-opt progressive language to justify their heinous views. Let me say this: it is emphatically not tribal for an oppressed minority or gender or group to protest their oppression and claim their absolute right to full and equal participation in American democracy and society. Black Lives Matter, Me Too. Black Lives Matter, Me Too, Time's Up are a cry for universal freedom, not special privilege. And any attempt to silence those voices in the name of tolerance is a disgusting and self-serving sham, and it has to end. Now, charmingly and somewhat wonderfully, Ms. Wormsley says she had none of that in mind. And this is often how art works. You know, she said that she's a science fiction nerd who wondered where the black people were in stories about the future. And she was raising that question. Her work basically asked, who is the future for? I love this work because of all of that, but mostly because for me it so perfectly captures the core concept at the heart of P4, which is to be intentional about the city and the future we are creating, especially in terms of who it is for. I actually love the fact that tomorrow outside this conference, a protest is planned. I think even by some of you in this room, against not the conference, but against the idea of bringing Amazon's HQ2 to Pittsburgh. And we may agree or disagree in this room on elements of that, but wherever you stand on it, we should all want to live in a community where those questions are being actively debated, discussed, and planned for. And I just want to say to everyone who feels passionate about that, whether we agree or not on the particulars, thank you for raising your voice. P4 merely gives a framework for how to think about this, to be truly thoughtful in a way virtually no American community has ever successfully done about what we are wishing into being. We started this process, as Andre pointed out, 3 years ago. So what have we learned? As we launch this next conference, what have we been able to gain in understanding, thanks primarily to many of you in this room, but also because of what's happened inside and outside of this process. So a few quick lessons that I've drawn. We've learned that our original premise was even more correct than we assumed. The planet is indeed urbanizing and rapidly, and Pittsburgh is indeed benefiting from these global trends. There will be 10 billion people on the planet by the year 2050, and 6.6 billion of those, roughly today's planetary population, will live in cities. We need cities to reinvent themselves in a way that feeds human aspiration and doesn't cause widespread misery, along with the poisoning of our climate, seas, air, water, and public health. We are learning that Pittsburgh's outstanding research universities, deep sense of place, walkable communities, and cultural and natural amenities really are a magnet for entrepreneurs, innovation-based companies, and creative people of all types, from restaurateurs to bloggers. We have the goods and the people to create a future-oriented economy if we value them. But we have also learned the perils of taking that for granted. We've learned that air quality really does matter, that water quality really is important, that public health really counts for something. For our health, obviously, and we should be able to stop there, full stop, end of sentence. But in America, we always have to justify things in terms of money and economy. So fine, we have also learned that this shiny economic future we envision collapses if we can't get our environmental act together. How do we imagine that stories likening our water system to Flint or our air quality to the worst in the country land on people and companies that might want to locate here? How do we imagine that they land on us? This is not, and it is time for us to cross this river once and for all. This is not a PR problem. It is a failure of public will, of imagination and effort. It is a fixable problem, so let's, for God's sake, fix it. We've learned that equity really counts, that when we are mindless about displacing people or oblivious to how growth affects neighbors or indifferent to how prosperity gets shared or mindless about who wins and who loses from development or willfully ignorant about how we are poisoning their homes and neighborhoods of the least disadvantaged, worst of all, we sow the seeds for present suffering and future failure. It should be enough to say this is about fairness, but it rarely is. So let's acknowledge what we are already learning from the widening and increasingly obscene wealth disparity around the globe, that unfettered capitalism, stripped of social value and free of policy constraint, is a formula for social, political, and economic decline. We've learned that quality of... Thank you. We've learned that quality of life and how we design our cities and technologies and who we design them for matters. The companies that are coming here or staying and growing here are doing it because of investments we have already made as a community in art, in culture, in parks, in public spaces, in inspiring design and workable neighborhoods, and creating real and authentic places that benefit people first. To take just one small example, Mayor Peduto took a boatload of heat for his commitment to bike lanes. But gee, it turns out that bike lanes matter to some people, and they are one small symbol of a broader commitment to sustainability and to being a city for the young and the not so young, which, by the way, apparently includes me now. But it expresses a commitment to creating a forward-thinking community. We are learning how right we are in our concern over the connection between cities and climate change. We are baking our planet faster than we had anticipated, and cities need desperately to offer new paths forward, and we need to be the ones who do that, because the ones who do that will seize the future. Faced in this country with the complete collapse of a hostile federal government on this and so many other critical policy fronts, we need to become the engines of innovation and change. The fight for our climate future starts right here. We have learned what we apparently keep needing to learn and relearn in this country, that racism and sexism and all manner of otherism are alive and well in America and in Pittsburgh, and that they hurt us and they hurt us and they hurt us and they hurt us and they hurt us over again. We must stand against these forces with all the vigilance and force in our power, but more than that, we have to stand for something, which we describe with banal words like inclusion and diversity, when what we really need is love and compassion and kindness. We need to love and care for each other enough to make room for everyone. Regions seen as hostile to others because of their religion, the color of their skin, their gender or gender orientation, their sexual orientation, where they come from, their immigration status, these regions may become safe havens for hate, but they will fail. You know, look, we have learned and are learning so much, but basically what we have learned is that this is our moment to do something right in Pittsburgh that no American city has gotten right before, and time's a-wasting. It is a moment to use this period of momentum to strive to become a community that embraces all its people, that respects its environment and planet, that protects its sacred places and heritage and identity and connections with history and the land, and that understands its obligation to perform at a high standard of excellence for all. How do we make that our future city? When we launched this process, we acknowledged that we were already operating in a moment in time, a brief window of opportunity when a new momentum was making change possible in a community that for 40 years had been managing decline, but where it was also not already too late to chart a course to where we really wanted to go. That moment is further along now, and we cannot act as though the window will remain open forever. Bob Dylan, who even I can quote now because he's a Nobel Prize winner, once sang, that he who's not busy being born is busy dying. What we've tried to do with this conference over the next 2 days is array some voices who can help us think about what we want to be born into now. And then it will be up to us, after this time of awake listening, both collectively and individually, to give birth to that something new. And what will it be? So let's get started. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome on stage my partner for the P4 conference, Mayor Bill Peduto.